I love to cook, but I also love to improve. Naturally, I wanted to take my protein game to the next level. That meant I had to go sous vide. Sous vide has become very inexpensive. Amazon sells a sous vide unit that a home cook can couple with a stock pot for just over $100. But that's a little too pricey for me, and I like doing projects. So I decided to create my own sous vide controller to use with my slow cooker. For this project, I used just a few easy-to-obtain items. These include a temperature controller that runs about $15 at Amazon, a pack of C14 plugs that run about $5, but you can salvage these too. I had thought I had an old power supply that I could use, but I couldn't find it anywhere. A 120 volt 15 amp outlet for about $1, a pack of female disconnects for $2, a pack of wire nuts for about $3, a 4x4x4 plastic surface mount electrical box that wasn't available at my small town hardware store, so I had to grab one for $10 at Lowe's, and about 4 feet of 14 AWG copper wire for just about $1. That made the whole project cost me just under $40. But some of these items might already exist in your workshop, which would make this much cheaper for you. I started by lining up my temperature controller with the lid of the electrical box so that I could cut a hole to set it in. I had to cut some labeling to get the faceplate off. I was careful not to break the side tabs for the faceplate. During this process, I kept telling myself to quit being lazy and go get my calipers to measure properly, but I wouldn't listen. So I just wound up basically eyeballing it. I drilled holes in the corners of my tracing and used a Dremel and the wrong bit to cut a hole. It took a while. Again, I was too lazy to get a proper bit. Eventually, however, I managed to complete the cut and insert the controller. The faceplate snaps easily back into place and the orange side clamps secure the controller to the lid. The faceplate does a nice job of hiding the way I botched cutting the hole, and I'm suddenly glad I never became a plastic surgeon. Note how I inserted this controller. I made a mistake we'll notice later, when it's either too late or I'm too lazy to fix it. Next, I needed to place my outlet. I had originally wanted a GFI outlet since this device will be next to something full of water, but those were expensive, so I bought a cheap outlet thinking I could fit it on the side of the electrical box, but it wouldn't fit, so I had to place it in the lid too. I eyeballed my cutting template for this too, but got a better drill bit to actually make the cuts, and that worked better. The problem here is that I still did a crummy job cutting the holes, and the end result is pretty gross looking. I fixed it off camera by making an outlet cover out of an empty milk carton and not gluing it into place. When I get a 3D printer, I'll make a custom outlet cover to replace the milk variety. Next, I got the C14 plug ready, and it went much better than everything else. It has a lip on it, and that helped hide how miserable I am at DIY. I drilled a couple of holes for screws to lock this in place later. Next came the wiring, and this is where we see the mistake I made earlier with the controller. I have to take off this back plate so that I can access the wiring nodes, and because the controller is turned the wrong way, I can't put it back on later. I wired things up based on the instructions with the controller. I'm not an electrician, I was actually really nervous doing this. When I tested the device for the first time, I actually plugged everything into each other first, and then plugged the device into the wall from a distance. When you're not an electrician, you think everything can explode. And I have to keep this mug looking pretty since I'm not a plastic surgeon. It took me forever to wire, and I barely had enough of the wire I purchased. I had to scavenge some copper wire from my kid's Tinker box in order to properly ground the whole project. The female disconnects come in really handy for the C14 plug. They hooked right on and off as needed. I was really glad I sprung for these because I was getting tired of wiring by now. Not because wiring is hard, but because it was about 90 degrees in my workshop and I was covered in plastic dust and I was not in a good mood for snuggling. Once I got everything hooked up and crammed together, I epoxied the outlet because I didn't want the pressure of plugging and unplugging to mess up my professional grade wiring job. I also used hot glue to keep things in place. Finally, I tested with a lamp first. I set the temperature controller to shut off at 92 degrees and it worked. Now I could finish putting everything together. Except I forgot a hole for the temperature sensor and wire to sneak through. A quick drilling took care of that, and once everything was fastened into place, I ran another test to make sure that I hadn't messed anything up. Finally, I did a real-world test with our junkiest slow cooker and a not-quite-right sous vide setup. I was delighted that it worked, and the chicken perfectly cooked within an hour.